This is it. You've got that straight edge there, and there's another straight edge there.
Yeah.
I think you could interpret that as a square mausoleum.
Is it a mausoleum for a very small person or a pet?
No, not at all. I mean, it's perfectly feasible to have a cremation in there, and you can actually get a burial in there. I mean, when you look at the size of Ian against the inside thing, you could actually squeeze a human body in there and get it in there, no problem.
So there could still be a burial there?
There could well be a burial in there.
Bridge? It's a nice piece of masonry over there.
Yeah, I'm glad you noticed it. It is indeed. It looks to be part of a column. You see this curved edge around here? That would have been the front of it.
Why is it flat on the other side?
Well, it's really been put up for aesthetic reasons rather than structural. So, of course, as it was standing there, this flat side would have been flush against the wall of the mausoleum, and then you would have just seen that curved column on the front. So there was no need to actually build a round column.
Yeah, but this is only half the story, isn't it? You've got something fairly small over there, but you've got this massive building here. You've got a wall there, a return there, a wall there, a return there. It's huge.
Ah, but you see, you're taking the obvious interpretation, which was exactly the interpretation that I came to when I first came here, and thinking that you did have this one big building. But you see, what we've got on the geophysics is this, which actually contradicts that there's going to be a wall across there, literally going across there, and we have no archaeological evidence for it.
So we're going to continue digging for the wall that Geophys says is here, while extending our trench to see if these two outer walls do join up. The truth is, it's mid-afternoon on day 3, and the layout of the mausolea is still a puzzle. Raysan and Guy are looking at possible models. Guy suspects each mausoleum was made up of a central chamber surrounded by a walled enclosure. But to confirm this, we need to find all 4 walls.
Oh, that's it, it's it there, isn't it?
Yeah.
There, look, there it is, it's pea grit.
This has been a truly remarkable dig. We came to this hill in search of a vicus, the civilian settlement that supported the Roman fort, and in the process we uncovered an entire lost landscape. We located the vicus along the road on either side of the fort, but we also discovered a huge earlier fort, which pushes the history of Vonovia back to the very beginning of Roman occupation in the north, and a row of 3 mausolea, the first group to be discovered in Britain for 150 years. We came here in search of the living, but found a city of the dead, a street lined with grand tombs, a little piece of the Roman world in the far north of the empire. And at its heart, perhaps the grandest mausoleum of all.
OK, Antonius, my brother and fellow comrade soldier at the mighty fort of Vonovia up there, we've come down the Street of Tombs to venerate the memory of our great ancestor, our great-great-grandfather, the mighty general who once acted as a soldier here, and we've come down to his tomb. Now, we've got to go through the vast, mighty door that would have once been here, pivoting there on iron, and in we come to the mausoleum area, and towering above us here is his grave, with an inscription that records his name, his mighty exploits, and around here other graves of his brother and his cousins, other members of the family. And these are the men who make you and me important people in the fort today. And our great hope one day is that we'll be buried here too.
This is footage that we shot from the helicopter yesterday, and the moat, as it were, is in this area here. And you can see as we come away from the site that you're at one end there of a long ridge that comes down here. Can you see?
Yes, it's very clear.
You've got a valley down here and a valley down here.
Which is totally different to what you would think.
It's a very distinct...
realise that, do you?
You don't, do you? Until you get up above it and see it. But
Stuart's keen to point out that this is the real boundary of the manor estate. The house and moat only occupied a small part of it.
the road bends around the edge of the manor, a classic piece of landscape analysis.
But what he's most excited about is that the ditch as recorded on the tithe map is probably Saxon, designed to stop anyone coming along this ridge of higher ground.
This is a classic location for a residence
Right.
of somebody quite important in the Saxon hierarchy. So there's a very strong chance that under here somewhere is that Saxon residence.
Oh.
So what was the ditch of the Saxon fortification, as it were, was reused in the Middle Ages as a garden feature, as part of the Hooke court, as it were.
And this is Victor's picture of what that Saxon stronghold might have looked like. But right now, I want to know about our medieval manor house. Have we found the other end of our missing Great Hall? Lads, if we're going to work out what's here, we're going to have to do it fairly quickly, aren't we?
All right. Bottom line is this. We do have a medieval building where we're standing, and it turns out that the 16-foot grid that medieval builders loved was used. It's 16 foot wide and it's 48 feet long. So that's very neat indeed. And it's probably 2 stories because there's a pad with an oak post supporting the floor deck. So I reckon 2-story building.
And which way does it face?
It goes south to north, so it's not going to be a chapel, yeah, and it's not linked, as far as we can see, with our surviving tower. So it's a mystery, isn't it?
It's certainly not a grand hall, though.
No, not a
I
great
mean,
hall.
that's the main thing, unfortunately.
So does that mean you do have to eat humble pie or don't have to eat humble pie?
I'd have said 50-50.
Right. Pie, but not very humble. Medieval great halls typically looked like this and are open to the roof. Although the structure we've found is of the same high quality, it's 2 stories high and narrow. Having consulted his books, Jonathan's suggesting that this could be a rare example of a first-floor hall. A few have been known in Dorset. This would mean the end of the Great Hall would have lined up with the arched entrance into the manor house. Some of the team aren't sure about Jonathan's latest theory. So where do they think the Great Hall is?
I don't know. I think there's a very, very big building going back that way.
Which I think is what I was saying last night.
Do we have time to
No.
put in a test pit or anything? What's really needed on this site is to open the entire lawn, but of course that's not possible in 3 days.
What we're suggesting is that perhaps this corner here is the corner of a big building that runs back down there, and that all this rubble in here is actually the fill-in from where they've actually taken the stone out.
If Phil's right, then the Great Hall would be situated here. Jonathan, though, doesn't agree. He thinks this building is more likely to be a large barn, in keeping with the pottery finds from Phil's first trench, which turned up lots of big dishes like this. This is a settling dish for making butter. We have to go with our expert's conclusion that this 2-story building was a first-floor Great Hall, giving us a manor house that looks something like this. Our reconstruction shows Hooke Court in the 15th century, the period when we know most about it. But we think this is pretty much how the manor house would have looked at the time it was set on fire during the Civil War. Soon after, all these medieval buildings were demolished, leaving only the posh lodgings and the gatehouse building standing. These, it said, were much repaired in 1647 by this man, the Duke of Bolton, once the family had their lands returned to them after the Civil War. Show us the pottery.
We have got 2 bits of pottery, Tony, which Duncan has not seen before. Come on, give us an answer.
Oh, that's 13th century.
13th century!
Hey! We've got our medieval hall, we've got our medieval hospital. Great, eh?
Wonderful.
Apparently it doesn't get better than this. These bits of 13th century pottery come from a vessel that would have looked like this, and confirm that our building was part of the original hospital built around 1212 AD. This hall was a living space and a room where food was served, and maybe it's also where pilgrims sat down to eat. We've untangled these 2 walls and the floor of the building, but much more work will be needed to get the full story. Although the records tell us it was still standing in 1581, we now know it was demolished by the time this big wall of the governor's mansion was plonked down on top of it. So although we had to correct this plan, We now believe it's an accurate layout of the hospital buildings as they were when the hospital closed in the 16th century. And we can now create a reconstruction to show what the site looked like at that time. Our medieval hall, like these other big stone buildings, would have been one of the oldest in the town and hugely impressive in a world that was still largely made of wood. Built 300 years before the big defensive walls around the town, in medieval times it occupied a prime location near the sea and would have stood out like a beacon to any pilgrim arriving at the harbour nearby. At the Domus Dei, they could give thanks for a safe passage and look forward to a bed and a free meal.
Hello, my name's John Gator. Time Team is fan-funded by Patreon. This vital support helps us to make new episodes. Joining Patreon gives you access to exclusive interviews, 3D models and masterclasses, plus lots more.